Well, even though the Dallas Cowboys have not won a Super Bowl since before I was born, DeMarcus Lawrence decided to tell the media yesterday, the Cowboys, the Eagles, they're actually pretty similar in their roster. Dallas is not that far off. Oh boy, we'll break that down. Also look at Jalen Hurts being nominated for an ESPY, and the Eagles linebacking core getting absolutely obliterated by PFF. I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show. What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here. Welcome to the Thomas Mott Show on a Thursday. Let's jump into everything happening with the NFL and the Philadelphia Eagles, starting with the ESPY Award finalists for Best NFL Player have been released, and no surprise there, Jalen Hurts is one of the final four. He's with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Jefferson, and Nick Bosa. Now, this isn't the MVP award. Doesn't really matter. No one really watches the ESPYs anyway, but nice to see some recognition there, and always makes me laugh whenever people put Jalen Hurts outside their top 5 of quarterbacks in the league. Well, the ESPYs have him as one of the top 4 players in the league, not just quarterbacks in the league. So all you Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, and the rest of these quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence, that would be rated above normally Jalen Hurts in some rankings. I'm looking at UCBS Sports. Most people actually think Hurts is a top 2, top 3, maybe top 4 quarterback in the NFL. Get to DeMarcus Lawrence here in just one second. First, though, I love this quote from Brandon Graham. He was being interviewed by Derek Gunn on Jakib Sports just yesterday. BG basically admitted, if you watch the entire interview, he thinks that they're building something special. Quote, "I just see that we're building something even more special," end quote, when talking about the current roster. I'm telling you, the Eagle players believe this current roster is better than where it was this past season. Now, time will tell. You got to figure out what the right guard looks like. You know, how does Jalen Carter fit in year one? What do the linebacking core do, which we'll talk about later? The safeties, the corner. I mean, there's a lot of question marks, but I would agree with BG. I think this roster is definitely better than where it was this past season. I'm very excited to see them play as we are getting close to being a month away from the start of training camp. Thumbs up for that. Okay, over here to the star of the show, and that is DeMarcus Lawrence. So DeMarcus Lawrence was asked by the Associated Press's Rob Mattey, basically, what is the gap between the Cowboys and the Eagles right now? This is a fair question. I'm not going to rip on DeMarcus Lawrence for answering this question, but I think he's a little off on his answer. He said, quote, "I don't feel like it's a huge gap at all." Okay, he also said, quote, "I feel like it comes down to certain details, not just the scheme, but also your locker room. I just feel like through this time right now when we headed to training camp that we made those adjustments, we learned those different things that we need to learn about our teammates so we can fully function the way we should out there on the field." So, sounds like some locker room issues. No, he's not admitting that, but it sounds like they're trying to figure things out a little bit there in Dallas. But I want to emphasize he doesn't feel like there's a huge gap at all. Now, when you go roster by roster, depth chart next to depth chart, sure, I would make the argument Philadelphia is better. Is it light years better? No. Is it 6 games, in the win column better? No, but it is better. DeMarcus Lawrence has to at least admit that. You would take the Eagle receiving core over the Cowboy receiving core. You take the Eagle offensive line over the Cowboy offensive line. Take the Eagle running backs over the Cowboy running backs. Sorry, Pollard, you're coming off of a pretty bad lower body injury. You would definitely take the quarterbacks. You would probably take the linebackers of the Cowboys over the Eagles right now. Take the Eagles defensive line. I would take the Eagles corners, although Cowboy fans would say Stephon Gilmore is not old, but he is pretty old. And you take the Eagles safeties, maybe the Cowboy safeties. Okay, that one could be a little bit up in the air. But overall, position group by position group, you would take Philadelphia. And the most important position group, how about the quarterback? Look at the number comparison. First off, just fantasy points in general. Dak Prescott 18th overall versus Jalen Hurts, who was 3. But completions, Hurts hasn't beat. Attempts, Hurts hasn't beat. Percentage, Hurts hasn't beat. Yards, Hurts crushed him. Yards per attempt, Hurts hasn't beat. 1 less passing touchdown, but way more rushing touchdowns. And then that really, really interesting number there. What is that? 6 interceptions to 15 interceptions? There's a big difference there, Dak Prescott. And then, of course, rushing yards. 7x more? 13x more rushing touchdowns. I mean, come on, what's the comparison here? We're talking about the gap between the Cowboys and the Eagles. This is the real gap. It's the quarterback gap. The Cowboys could go pretty darn far with their current roster if Dak Prescott could lead them and not throw a bunch of interceptions. And listen, they win a lot of games in the regular season. Cowboy fans will point to that shootout against not Jalen Hurts in Jerry World last year where the Cowboys won. And guess what? Dak looked great in that game. We're not going to argue that. However, when it comes down to it, when the rubber hits the road, when you really need to win a football game, do you trust Dak Prescott? And the answer has, for his entire career, been no. He's not been able to get past the divisional round, and hence why I think the gap was a little bit further than DeMarcus Lawrence seems to say. Again, I'm not going to sit here and trash Dallas and say that they're a garbage football team. They're probably the second best team in the NFC East, and by default, they're a top 5 team in the NFC because the NFC is not that great. But the gap between Philadelphia and Dallas is a lot wider than Lawrence is hinting at here, and I think most of you guys would agree with that, though. Let me know down below. Okay, speaking of this, I just want to quickly throw up this really fun graphic that Colin Cowherd did yesterday on his show. You want to see the gap between the Eagles and the Cowboys, not just right now with the current rosters, but over the past 20 years, since 2000. Here's playoff wins. You see Philadelphia's at the top there, 6 16, second most. Pretty good. Where's Dallas? Okay, not on the front line. Okay, not on the second line. Third line. Wow. 4 in the past 20 years. That's with Dak and Romo, 2 highly regarded quarterbacks by most people in the NFL. They've won 4 playoff games. That's 1 less than the Cardinals and Chargers. That's the same as the Texans, Raiders, Bills, and Jaguars, the latter 2 of which did not have good players. Didn't have Josh Allen for like the entire time, and they just got Trevor Lawrence. They are in the same category as the Bears, Commanders, Dolphins, Cleveland Browns, and Detroit Lions. That's like the bottom tier level, just to show you the gap. There's a big gap between the roster right now, even bigger gap between which franchise has been more successful over the past 20 years, basically my entire lifetime. Pretty crazy about that. All right, let's go over here to the PFF rankings in terms of the Eagle linebacker unit. They were ranked nearly dead last, and you see what they said up on your screen. Quote, 31st. It'd be hard to judge the Eagle linebackers till we see them in action. Last year's starters, Edwards and Kazir White, left in free agency, and left the Eagles with a huge hole in the middle of their defense. Nicholas Morrow enters the fold as the only player with significant experience, but he's guarded above 54 in just 1 of his past 5 seasons in the NFL. Then they get into Nakobe Dean, blah, 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 needing to see more production. Now, I will say Morrow's highest grade was last year, so saying he was only graded above 54 in the past 5 years, well, he was above 54 last year, so what are you going to do there? But I'm not going to argue here. The Eagle linebacking core is an unknown. Now, we all think Nakobe Dean's going to be very, very good, but we only saw a very tiny sample size this past year. Again, I think he's going to be great, but you couldn't grade Nakobe Dean on what he will be. You have to grade him on what he has been, and that's the problem with the PFF rankings a lot of times is they're going off of last year's data. Let's just fast forward to this time next year. Do you think the Eagles will have the 31st ranked linebacking core? Probably not. They'll probably be somewhere in the teens. I guess they'd be 18 or 15 or 14 or at best 10, right? We're really trying to improve. But let me tell you, if I'm not worried about it because Howie Roseman's not worried about it. He's never been worried about linebacker. He's never spent big-time offseason free agent or draft capital on a linebacker because he doesn't think it's necessary. He thinks if your front 4 is good and your back 4 is good, the linebackers can be mediocre. And if that's the case in Philadelphia, I still think they have a much better roster and will be better than where they were this past season. All right, over here to the new Lions helmet. This makes you think about the Eagles' new Kelly Green jerseys and when they will actually be released. This Detroit logo is... it's iffy. I'm seeing Food Lion being compared to this. The tail on the lion is really long. The colors are great. The logo, I know it's a throwback, right? I know, I get it, but it's not my favorite. I don't hate it, but it's not my favorite. Colors, though, as always, Detroit has good colors, and guess what? They're going to be pretty good this year. They'll wear these twice. I think they're going to wear them the final game of the year and then week 8, maybe. It could be wrong on that one, but looks pretty good. I'm fine with it. Let's hope the Kelly Greens look even better. Bleacher Report has an update on the Tyreek Hill situation as he is officially under investigation after being charged, or charges have been pressed, allegedly, for him allegedly hitting a man in a marina in Miami on Sunday. This whole story is bizarre. It's ridiculous. If you want to read about it, TMZ, Google this thing. All I have to say is, I'm glad Eagle players are not in the news right now. As much as this, exact story with an Eagle player would get a bunch of clicks on this YouTube show, no thank you. I would much rather have no Jalen Hurts, no A.J. Brown, no insert Eagle player here in a headline like this for the offseason. We should hear 0 about the Eagles over the next month. 0. I shouldn't even hear that Jalen Hurts was spotted anywhere, even though he's free to go wherever he wants. I'm just saying. No news is great news, and the fact this is not the Eagles is good enough news for me. All right, plenty more stuff happening the next couple of days and weeks. Have you even seen my daily shorts? Do you like them? I'm trying to do as many shorts as possible. I think they're really, really fun, and you guys need to be enjoying them. Be sure to subscribe. Thumbs up for that. We're putting a lot of work on those as usual. I'm Thomas Mott. This has been The Thomas Mott Show.